You know, all the trouble in this world is caused by people wanting to be important. T.S. Eliot. So, I've read a little bit about my great-grandfather with this book here. I recorded some of the readings, and I've got to say that I'll take my chances in the face of these alleged global dangers. I'll take my chances in preserving my own national sovereignty in the face of this push for this global, one world, top-down, totalitarian, technocratic regime that is now front and center for all to see. So I'll take my chances. In other words, better dead than red. You know, that quote was used in this book, better dead than red, which means it's better to fight and die on your feet than die on your knees to communism and Bolshevik breadlines. So that was a quote in the book, right? And it was conveniently used in that book, Better Dead Than Red. But in the end, the book tells us that it's better to be red. It's better to be red and dead than stand on your feet for national sovereignty and for patriotism. So I can't say that I'm all impressed with the work of my great-grandfather Grenville Clark. Not impressed at all. In fact, I think that what he did was not only intellectually dishonest, it was borderline treason, but the way in which he did it and how he weaponized language allowed him to essentially get away with it. And as I've said before, history is simply the story told by the victors. So the work overall was intellectually dishonest. And in the beginning, as I read about him, I thought he was a pretty cool guy. You know, I wanted to like him. I wanted to maybe give this dude a shot. I really liked that he shared a lot of the same interests that I did. Great, whatever. But in the end, he gets a failing grade. And it truly is a shame that a man like that had to turn around and be intellectually dishonest. This book is a work of intellectual dishonesty. What it does is, basically the reason why the New World Order is even a thing is because a bunch of faggoty intellectuals from Harvard who think that they are better than you got in a meeting together and basically talked about us like cattle. And, now our laws are predicated upon the pretensions of the elite and what they have to think about a certain problem next to the fire. So I am not at all impressed. I mean, sure, the guy was very smart. The guy had all these credentials. The guy accomplished all these things. And the weird thing is some of these things that he did, granted, were great, but that really served as a Trojan horse, that served as lining, that served as a lubricant for him to fuck the country in ways that were not so obvious until decades later. Because the Roosevelt administration, despite what this book has to say about the Roosevelt administration, was a colossal failure, and it was treasonous. And it was the administration that truly ushered in communism and foreign subversion, having to do with a nation state that we are now somehow beholden to. Isn't that a little nice full circle, full circle, come home to roost moment for a lot of us. So I'll take my chances, better dead than red. The pretensions of a Harvard elitist pussy are not going to dictate how I live my life in the so-called free world under alleged constitutional provisions and basic civil liberties, which he took and chipped away at and eroded and gave himself license to denigrate constitutional provisions in the face of his discoveries going around the world and interviewing journalists. And he comes home, basically with a communist hat on and spread his world peace through world law garbage throughout the world. But this guy, this work, and the way in which it was written, sure, it was all fun at first, and it is a fun read at certain points. The guy had a lot of redeeming qualities. Pretty much everything about the guy was pretty cool up until the point where he turned around and sold our country out to communist philosophy. And the academic freedom thing, I know a lot of academics probably think that was great. That was really just so that they could turn the academic landscape into a flashpoint necessary to usher in Zio supremacy and communism in the form of the New World Order, which is basically just communism with extra steps. So I'm truly revolted, disgusted, beside myself that I could even share a family lineage with somebody like this, who took their power, their position of prominence, and they famously and historically abused it, like we've seen with so many other powerful figures in the past. So overall, the work, as flowery and as highfalutin as it is, and as interesting as it might have been for me, and maybe others at certain points who cared to follow along, in the end, it stank to high heaven of subversion. You don't take your intellectual faculties and your credentials to then justify subversion of your country on the back end, citing that the world was not intellectually ready for a new world and a new idea of global harmony, in which he cited would end poverty and war. And as I've said before, the road to hell is always paved with good intentions, isn't it? So these people knew what they were doing. This guy was not an idiot. This guy was clearly read in on what was going on. The other argument that some normie would make is that he really didn't understand what was going on in the grand scheme of it all. Yes, he did. He knew exactly why there was an agenda and a push for a one world government order, and it's the oldest reason in the book. Money and control of the masses. There's always a group of people that are going to be interested in oppressing the oppressed. So I'm not amused. Other people probably think that I should be amused that I share a lineage with this, but I'm not. This was actually more of a cautionary effort in trying to awaken people to the idea that your country has been subverted long before any of us were even born. We thought that this whole subversion thing was new. It was not new. And I knew to a certain degree that it was not unique to the time that we are living in. But I did not know to what degree this corruption ran. And for a guy that championed the rule of law under the blind and equal weight of justice, sure contradicted themselves when they decided to bail out communists and to push for academic freedom, which were the harbingers to the whole issue of what is going on now with the schools. See, yeah, okay, people will argue what? So you want a fascist state? Well, now people are going to have to pick a lane here. And this is where it gets tough for a lot of people, is that, okay, so do you want academic freedom or do you want academic fascism? See, that's the real $5 million snooty intellectual problem that this guy should have really been wrestling with. But instead, this guy concerned himself with these racial and social problems. Well, we had other things going on at the time, namely the spread of communism and all the other wars and conflicts going on. But like any other elite does in their time, any other socialite does in their time, well, everything's blowing up around them and their fellow man is starving after they just served their country. This guy's going around the world and crying about racism and social equality, because that's what you do when you are an elite socialite. You complain about things that really are not presently like a danger to the average American citizen. So you're therefore tone deaf, you're out of touch. So, being told my whole life what success looks like, being told my whole life what intelligence looks like, being told my whole life that the Ivy League and things like Harvard are the bee's knees, I can't help but feel scandalized and angered now, because I pretty much have read through this book and have confirmed my own suspicions about organized corruption and institutional power, in addition to government, state, public-private relationships and their influence on not only foreign policy, but academia and our culture and way of life. So I read this book, and I might put some more chapters up if I find that, I only pick through the certain chapters to read on my YouTube that I think that people might find interesting. And sure, I might read out the part out loud where Mark Twain and Rudyard Kipling, the famous English writer, the guy who wrote Baa Black Sheep, the poem. Yeah, he was friends with Rudyard Kipling and Mark Twain and Amy Lowell, the cigar-smoking woman or whatever. All the famous people hung out at that Dublin, New Hampshire place. And it doesn't impress me. Nor am I saying that to be boastful. Nor did I share this book with you all to be boastful. In fact, I am actually quite horrified by all this, and this actually kind of increased to my paranoia overall. I do not take any pleasure in having any relation to this whatsoever. I thought that it was simply pertinent to the time and the theater, the geopolitical theater that we all exist in. So I'm truly horrified. My reading that was basically a cautionary effort for people to truly realize that this agenda 2030, the Green New Deal, the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, whatever you want to call it, the New World Order, world peace through world law, it'll keep rebranding itself But my point is that I read that as a cautionary effort to awaken you to the idea that this effort for a one world government is very real, and it's not a conspiracy theory, even though Vice TV wrote a whole entire article about how the New World Order is a conspiracy theory. And you had all these talking points on the mainstream media telling you that the New World Order is a conspiracy theory, when I have, in fact, just read hard evidence that that is not true, and that the New World Order is real. And these people are openly telling you that, yeah, it's about time that we push this forward. And it's truly horrifying that this whole term has been uttered by all the most corrupt, evil, demonic, powerful politicians, celebrities, and anybody you can think of that there were in the history of this country and world. This is like really scary. And my response to global unrest is that I'm going to preserve my national sovereignty, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to preserve my own national sovereignty. And I do not wish to surrender my national sovereignty for a global homo regime to give everybody the illusion of security and safety. In other words, better dead than red. And the other point that I want to drive home is that, yes, all the danger and chaos and poverty that these people complain about, these socialites and elites complain about, they're the ones that basically created all the trouble, and then they go and get nominated for Nobel Peace Prizes for their efforts. So there's very clearly, like I've said before, the rescue anger victim, the order out of chaos, the problem reaction solution. Because what better way to control everything than to control both sides of a problem? So better dead than red. I'll take my chances, thank you, in the face of subversion on levels never seen before. I will not cede my rights to unconstitutional laws that were dreamt up by pretentious Harvard intellectuals that use their birthright to chip away at our freedom in the form of bureaucratic attrition. So I'll take my chances. National sovereignty has never looked better to me than it has now. Because they want your national sovereignty, they want your freedom, and they will stop at nothing to exchange your rights for light and transient causes, much in the way that this motherfucker did. Pardon my French. I don't believe that was part of the Huguenot lingo. I'll have to check though. But that was just about the most faggoty work I have ever read in my life. Just like when Ronald Reagan talked about the time he went to Bohemian Grove, and it was really funny on national television. He was like, I went to that Bohemian Grove, and I have just got to say that it was the most faggoty thing that I have ever seen in my fucking life. But yeah, that's basically how I describe this book. I don't respect intellectuals who pretend to be these pro-military, conservative, Republican, patriot, Joe Schmo, I'm just your friend, I'm an average citizen type, who then goes and becomes partial to communist ideology and as a result drafts a very creepy doctrine to erode national sovereignty and to usher in the New World Order, which is probably why in the Roosevelt administration, they put the all-seeing eye over the dollar bill. I'm willing to wager that was my great-grandfather Grenville Clark's idea. I guarantee you that wasn't actually FDR's idea. I bet you now that was my great-grandfather's idea, having read what I read about his world peace through world law agenda and how he truly wanted a one world government. He was hell-bent on it. And that I represents the government overseeing everybody. So my great-grandfather, Grenville Clark, it was his idea to put the I over the pyramid on the $1 bill. I swear on my mother's grave, cross my heart and hope to die. But God willing, there's a plan for me to move forward from all this and to live my life as a young, happy male. I want to move forward from this, and I want to move forward from this time in fucking history, so that I could one day laugh about this, and this can just be something that becomes water under the bridge. But I'm horrified. I'm not proud of this stuff. I'm not proud of reading this. I don't like intellectually dishonest pissants who use their position of power to subvert my government. But yeah, I give the book an F, and I give my great-grandfather an F.
At first she thought it was cool.